That's kind of a random number. But
4,575. Nah, this album is a 10. This album is a 10. 10 out of 10.
4,574? Oh my gosh. Well, hey Ted, we're still not going to get to your review this week, actually, because at this point we're going to welcome Wick Terrell to the show. Wick is an editor at SB Nation's Red Reporter site. I have a question about Red Reporter specifically on their Twitter handle, and can be found on Twitter. He can be at Wick Farrell and of course at Red Reporter. So Wick's been on before, always a great guest. Wick, how are you? And thanks again for being on.
I'm great, guys. How are you all this morning?
We're doing well. We just had about 10 minutes discussion of politics, so I'm not sure if any baseball fans are still listening, but I
caught the tail end of that one.
Okay. Well, hopefully it was okay. But
totally, completely.
Awesome. I've noticed the Twitter handle for Red Reporter is now Red Rebuilder. It was awesome.
Well, for a while, after the first press conferences at the end of the season when they talked about the stuff they were going to have to do with the team, we were a Red Rebooter for a while because they chose to go with reboot because they didn't want to commit to a rebuild. But yeah, it's, as you can see by what the Cubs have been up to of late, pretty much it's what's going to have to happen. So.
Yeah, it's Cubs. Have they done anything? I haven't really noticed. If they've
they haven't really been in the news since 1908. So they've been doing their best to put themselves in position to pretty much dominate the headlines so far.
Absolutely. Well, I want to start with a Cincinnati Reds question about Chapman. Of course, he's involved with some kind of domestic dispute issue. I don't know if all the facts are out, or even if we'll know what the facts truly are. But he was involved with in a trade to the Dodgers, and that fell through, obviously. What do you make of everything going on with the status of Chapman? And surely he'll be traded before next season, right?
Well, from a purely baseball perspective, he's the Reds' biggest trade chip. He's the most electric reliever in all of baseball, and there's going to be a very large market for him. On a more personal note, he was charged with a domestic violence issue. He reportedly put his hands on his girlfriend and maybe choked her. He fired 8 gunshots in his garage in a fit of rage. The police came out to it, and best I can tell, they got interviews from the people that wanted to talk about it, but they didn't get enough to actually proceed with charges. The parties involved didn't want to press charges. So technically speaking, the case is closed. However, MLB has begun instituting its new domestic violence policy, probably in the wake of all the stuff that happened in the NFL. And so they're going to look into the case. And so right now there's a little bit of speculation that he might be facing potential suspension because I haven't memorized the bylaws, but I think that there is the ability for Major League Baseball to step in and issue a suspension if they feel that there's enough evidence to do so, which doesn't even need a technical legal case to have as they're back on. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Unfortunately, Rocky shortstop Jose Reyes has actually got charged with a domestic violence incident. So he's also in this protocol to find out what's going to happen with him. So there are 2 test cases for Major League Baseball to really show how staunch of a stance they want to take on this. And from the Reds' perspective, it's basically put a lot of their postseason rebuilding efforts on hold because they don't really know how it's going to play out. So it's I'm as interested to watch to see what they choose to do as everybody, just because it's going to set a very large precedent.
Hey, Wick, this is Todd. Hopefully, for the Reds' sake, that they get through this quickly so the Reds can move on, like you said, and hopefully Major League Baseball is slightly more effective than the NFL in the policy, which is about as ineffective as you can possibly be. Moving on, though, in general, in the off season, to you, what have been the 3 biggest surprises so far?
3 biggest surprises so far. Well, I think that. Let me phrase this. The Diamondbacks being a little bit off in their player evaluation isn't surprising, but the extent to which they've flexed their dollar muscles around it has been. I don't think anybody on the planet thought that they'd be the leaders in the clubhouse and go out and sign Zach Greinke, much less to sign him for over $200 guaranteed. I don't think anybody saw the Shelby Miller trade coming with that kind of largesse going back to Atlanta in return. And those 2 moves put together, they're obviously their future's a little bit mortgaged at this point, both financially and with all the prospects they've sent away. But they've put together a pretty effective team around 2 stars, really, in A.J. Pollock and Paul Goldschmidt. So they're going to be a dangerous team this year, and I really didn't see that coming as the offseason began. So I think that's got to be the leaders in the clubhouse at this point. Aside from that, what the Cubs have done, if you look at it on paper, from where they came 2-3 years ago, it's the elephant in the room that you always kind of saw developing. As on paper, as flawlessly as they've done it so far, has got to be a little bit surprising because even good GMs make missteps. And obviously there's no guarantee it's all going to work out very well. But every move that they've made so far has been like, man, like, that's perfect. Like, that's exactly what they should have done. And so that's been impressive more than surprising, I'd say. But those have got to be the two that have taken the headlines so far.
Right, and as far as the Cubs go, of course, we've been talking about it earlier, them picking up Zobrist and shipping Starlin Castro out to the Yankees. To me, they pick up Zobrist because he's consistent. He's got the veteran leadership. Castro had a ton of potential, but it was just so erratic. Do you think that was the right move to go with they gave up a lot of years there.
They did give up a lot of years there, but they had so much middle infield depth. I think once they got Addison Russell from the A's a couple of years ago, between his obviously rock-solid production and potential with the kind of more volatile asset in Javier Baez, I think they looked up and said, wait, we've got two middle infielders that can pretty much take this and run with it. And they had Starlin Castro, I think, guaranteed to, 7 years and $63 million when they initially signed him. And while he was still really, really young, he's a very contact-dependent hitter because he doesn't take a whole lot of walks. He's not a very patient hitter. And when he's in the slump, he's a real detriment on offense. On defense, he's by far and away one of the least good, in terms of range at least, middle infielders in all of baseball. So I think they kind of got sick and tired of realizing that he wasn't going to be a great shortstop and moved on. And I think they picked the right one to move. His bat will play, and when he's on a hot streak, he's one of the most talented hitters in baseball, but he seems to have been extremely streaky. Upgrading that for a more consistent guy like Zobrist, who knows how to take a pitch, knows how to get on base, has a lengthy history working with Joe Madden in multiple positions, I think that's a phenomenal move. The one thing I'm still waiting to see is what they do with their pitching rotation. It was fantastic last year. I think they led all of baseball in FWAR and in FIP. But Jake Arrieta threw 55 more innings than he ever had last year. He's already 29 years old and had from a bat perspective, he had a kind of a freak season. John Lester's going to be 32. John Lackey's, 37? So they've got some holes they've got to fill there. They still do have pieces to move and money to move to be able to make that happen. But I'm interested to see how they backfill that because, wow, their offense and their defense is going to be impressive.
Hey, Wick, this is Ted from the New York field office. Welcome to the show. We briefly talked about Greinke and Shelby Miller, and there's, could there potentially be more coming with the Arizona Diamondbacks? And second question is, has the power shifted in the NL West?
That's a great question, really. I feel like the Diamondbacks have made a pretty solid effort to say, yep, we're all in. So if there's another move that they identified that needs to be made, I think they've got the resource to be able to do it. Not on the Greinke level, but there's few players that are on the Greinke level. I know they've been connected with Mike Leake, who's an Arizona native and Arizona State grad and former Cincinnati Reds, so they might try to find somebody else to back in that rotation. I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen. In terms of power in the NL West, it's kind of a little bit early to say. I mean, the players that are still left in this free agent market, that pool itself is leaps and bounds better than what next year's entire pool is going to be. Finding out where Justin Upton goes and Chris Davis goes and Leake and Johnny Cueto and Alex Gordon and all the players on the reported trade market right now. Todd Frazier's going to get traded. Earl Chapman's going to get traded eventually. Andrew Miller's on the block. Waiting to see where all of those kind of fall is going to be interesting because I know the San Francisco Giants have been underbidders on Greinke. They flirted with Jason Hayward. I think they're still going to go after Justin Upton very, very hard for the left field spot. And if they get him, that's a huge bet on an already talented team. The Dodgers have kind of been in the same boat as well. They were underbidders on Greinke, and everybody knows they've got tons and tons of money. So it'll be interesting to see how they fill out the rest of their offseason. But the National League, as you guys mentioned earlier, it's a beast right now. The Cubs have laid claim to the Central. The Cardinals and Pirates are still there and good. The NL West is just they're throwing money around left and right, and it's going to be a wild year in the National League this year.
So my follow-up question is overall AL, which team, which structure has done the most so far to take their team to the next?
Actually, sorry, Ted has gone Megatronic again, as his New York internet is apt to do. I will ask the next question for him. So, what team or who has done the most to make their team take the next step next year? Obviously, the Cubs have improved, and they were close anyway, but is there another team out there possibly besides the Cubs, or it could be the Cubs, that really should be able to take that next step with what they've done this offseason?
I think it's got to be between the Cubs and the Diamondbacks right now. The sleeper team and all this, and it's hard to call them a sleeper team because they're always so good and everything they do always works out so well, is the Cardinals. The Cardinals have Adam Wainwright back, so they've got a frontline rotation of Adam Wainwright, Michael Wacha, Carlos Martinez, which are three of the most talented pitchers in baseball right now. And they've shown they've had the money because they've chased other guys that they've missed out on in both Greinke and in Hayward. They're linked to Alex Gordon. I think they'll probably kick the tires on a couple of the other big pitching prospects out there. So I don't want to make the determination that they're gone just because at this point in the season they haven't done a whole lot. But they're on the brink of making a couple big moves, and I think it's going to happen. And when they do, it's going to be like, man, should have seen that coming. That's the Cardinals, and you know that'll all work out perfectly like they always do. But up to this point, there's nobody that can trump what the Cubs have done. On top of adding the players that they did them on contracts that really, really make sense for them and for everybody else. Getting Lackey on just a 2-year deal. They gave up a draft pick to sign him, but they had so much depth in their system that could do that. And the Jason Hayward deal, they got him to sign for less money than was offered by both the Nationals and the Cardinals, and they got him with 2 opt-out clauses, which are so beneficial to the player, obviously, especially the guys as young as Hayward, where if he has fantastic years, he can opt out and get another gigantic deal. But from the team's perspective, too, that's 2 chances they have to not get stuck paying a guy who's largely defensive and speed dependent. Should he get hurt, they've got the ability to cancel the contract and move on. So it's extremely well negotiated, aside from the fact that they got really, really talented players. And they've impressed the heck out of me.
And I'm a Dodgers fan. I'm not ready to jump off a bridge just because we lost Greinke and some other things we haven't done this season. And a lot of Dodgers fans seem like, oh my gosh, the team's going to stink next year for whatever reason. They still have a lot of talent. Saying that, is there a team, it could be the Dodgers or another team that surprised you by their true lack of activity so far?
I think the Mets were in a position to really make a big splash this offseason. They obviously had such a good run last year, and so much of their young pitching is tied up, and all of their better players aren't really going anywhere. And it seems like they've kind of treaded water a little bit. Obviously, with Michael Kadire retiring last night, and I think he was due, like $11 or $12 million this year. I'd be interested to know when they kind of knew that he was going to be retiring, because that's a lot of money for a payroll that even if it's in that big market because of the Wilpons financial mess, that's a big portion of what they could spend this offseason. So I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't have at least had an inkling about that before. But losing Daniel Murphy and swapping him out for Neil Walker and going out and getting Asdrubal Cabrera, that's an upgrade up the middle infield, but those aren't big splashes. And when you factor in losing Murphy and what he's provided for him, it's kind of almost a tread water situation. Aside from that, they've watched Kadire go, and that's kind of all they've done so far. And obviously, like we said before, there's plenty of time for them to go out and make other moves to improve the rest of their team. But coming off a year like they had last year, I kind of thought they'd do a little bit more because they've got a really, really talented core. And obviously the Nationals aren't slowing down and trying to make themselves better. So it's going to be interesting to watch to see how they pull off the rest of this offseason, because they've got what it takes to put a really, really good team together if they do it.
So is there any player that you think has not been traded, obviously, because they can't control that, but has signed somewhere else? Greinke obviously has great numbers over the last couple of years in Arizona, but is there a player out there that you think made a big mistake moving to the new team because of maybe a bad fit, bad park for them to play in defensively or hitting or pitching, or just simply a bad roster on their new team?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Let me think here for a second. Off the top of my head,